Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon were two Dutch students who disappeared in the Panamanian jungle on April 1, 2014. The case is commonly referred to as Caso de Holandeses, or the case of the Dutch girls. The two students arrived in the Central American country in mid-March for a 6-week vacation. They had already been traveling around the country for 2 weeks when, on March 29th, they arrived in the resort town of Boquete, located in the western part of Panama. There, they stayed with a local host family and spent time working with children. Lisanne Froon, 22, had a degree in applied sciences, while 21-year-old Kris Kremers had recently completed her studies in art education before embarking on the trip. Both girls grew up in Amersfoort, Netherlands, and had moved into a shared dorm room just weeks before their journey. They both worked at the same cafe, saving up enough money for their trip to Panama, where they planned to learn Spanish and contribute to the local community in some way. On the morning of April 1st, at around 11 o'clock a.m., they set out for a hike with their host family's dog in the rainforest surrounding the Bar volcano. They took the well-known Pianista Trail, located near the town. Before leaving, they posted on Facebook that they were going for a walk around the city, believing that the trail was just a circular route that would bring them back. From that moment on, nothing. That evening, their host family noticed that the dog had returned home alone, without the girls. Additionally, their families back in the Netherlands stopped receiving messages from them, something they had been doing daily. The next morning, they failed to show up for an appointment with a local tour guide. From that moment on, nothing. The following day, the police launched a search operation with the help of locals. By April 6th, the girls' families had arrived from the Netherlands, accompanied by Dutch detectives, search dogs, and investigators. A thorough search lasted for 10 days, and the families even offered a $30,000 reward for any useful information about their missing daughters. However, despite all efforts, there was no sign of Kris or Lisanne. For weeks, there were no new developments in the case. However, 10 weeks after the girls' disappearance, a local woman found Froon's blue backpack on the banks of the Culebra River, near the small village of Alto Romero, north of where the girls were staying. The woman claimed that the backpack had not been there the day before. Inside the backpack, authorities discovered 2 pairs of sunglasses, $83 in cash, Froon's passport, a water bottle, her camera, several brass, and both girls' phones. Everything was neatly packed, in good condition, and most notably completely dry. This was highly unusual, given that it was found on a riverbank. When police examined the phones, they discovered that just 5 hours after setting out on their hike, both girls had tried to call emergency services. Kremers first attempted to dial 112, the international emergency number, followed by Froon, who tried calling from her Samsung Galaxy phone 12 minutes later. However, neither call went through due to a lack of reception. By the 3rd day, after spending 2 nights in the wilderness, the girls continued their attempts to call for help. One of these attempts briefly connected to Panama's emergency services, but the call lasted just over a second before cutting out. This was the last recorded attempt to make a phone call. Froon's phone eventually ran out of battery the next day, leaving no further activity on her device. However, data from Kremers' iPhone showed that from that point on, someone continued turning the phone on multiple times a day, seemingly searching for signal. These attempts were usually made in the mornings between 9:30 and 11 o'clock a.m., and later in the early afternoon, around 1:45 p.m. Then, on April 6, 5 days after their disappearance, someone entered multiple incorrect PIN codes into Kremers' phone. The correct password was never entered again. It was revealed that between April 7th and 10, they attempted to call for help a total of 77 times without success. The last trace of activity was on April 11th at 11:56 a.m., when the phone was turned on again for a little over an hour before being switched off once more. Numerous photos were found on Froon's camera, providing further insights. First, on the day of their departure, nothing unusual happened until the first emergency call. They were simply walking in the forest. On April 8th, more than 90 flash photos were taken between AM and AM, in complete darkness, in the rain, deep inside the jungle. One of the photos shows a tree branch with candy wrappers on it and a rock in the background. Another appears to depict toilet paper, along with a mirror placed on another rock. In a third photo, one of the girls is visible specifically, the back of Kris Kremers' head. Reportedly, her temple appears to be bloody. After the discovery of the backpack, a new search was launched, which led to the finding of Kremers' shorts neatly folded on top of a rock several kilometers away from the riverbank where the phones had been found. It is common for lost hikers to leave behind personal items in hopes of making it easier for rescuers to find them. However, these items are usually not neatly folded and placed on a rock, where the slightest breeze could blow them away. Instead, they are typically secured to something. 2 months later, not far from where the backpack was discovered, investigators found a pelvic bone, a shoe containing a foot, and numerous bones scattered across the area. DNA tests later confirmed that the remains belonged to the two girls. Froon's bones still had traces of skin, but Kremers' bones appeared to have been completely stripped clean. Panamanian authorities ultimately closed the case, concluding that the girls likely fell from a higher elevation into the river, which caused their deaths. Their remains were then scattered by scavengers. That was the official version now. Let's take a look at the strange and unsettling details. First, it's important to note that the remains were found at an elevation of 700 meters above sea level, in an area that is no longer a typical jungle with extreme heat, but rather a cooler, forest-like environment known as a cloud forest. In such a place, decomposition occurs much more slowly, and large carnivores are rare, if present at all. A local journalist from one of Panama's biggest newspapers later reported that authorities handled the evidence extremely negligently. For one, there was no continuous supervision over the discovered belongings and remains. No new fingerprints were taken, and little effort was made to prevent contamination of the evidence. The journalist believed that authorities deliberately silenced key aspects of the case to protect Panama's tourism industry. For context, tourism contributes over 14% to Panama's GDP, with foreign visitors' expenditures making up the largest portion. Jeremy Creed, a journalist for the Daily Beast, conducted an extensive investigation into the case a few years ago and managed to obtain several confidential documents. One of these was a report from the Sharik Province Court, which clearly stated that after an 18-month police and prosecutorial investigation, it was concluded that homicide had occurred. However, no charges were filed, nor was a suspect named. Further analysis of the camera revealed another suspicious detail. One of the flash photos taken in the dark on April 8th was missing. The camera had stored a large number of photos, yet the sequence was oddly disrupted. After image file numbers May 7th and May 8th, the next one was May 10th, skipping May 9th entirely. The timestamp showed that May 10th was taken at 1:30 a.m., while the previous images were taken during the daytime. This suggests that the missing May 9th photo might have been captured in the critical time gap between those periods. Since most of the photos were not particularly revealing, it is possible that this missing image contained crucial evidence of what or whom they encountered. Keith Rosenthal, an American forensic photography expert, examined the case and concluded that the photo was not simply deleted because someone didn't like it. Many other poorly taken images remained on the camera, so why remove just this one? The missing photo also raised concerns among the Dutch investigators who traveled to Panama. Even with the most advanced forensic technology, they were unable to recover the deleted image or even detect a trace of it on the memory card. This is highly unusual because standard file deletions always leave some residual data. Instead, this suggests that someone with technical expertise deliberately erased the file using a computer, ensuring that it was completely wiped from the device. While the local authorities may not have gone overboard in uncovering the truth, rumors about a few strange individuals had been circulating in the area for quite some time. One such person was a tour guide who was highly controversial, even among the locals. Some saw him as a pioneer in boosting local tourism, while others believed he might be Panama's most wanted serial killer. What is known about the man is that he speaks a little English and a little German, is in his mid-60s, and everyone who has met him describes him as incredibly strong. Notably, he only works with female tourists. And as fate would have it, this tour guide was precisely the one the two girls were supposed to meet the day after their disappearance. However, leaked police records revealed that he had actually met them on the day they went missing. Of course, this alone doesn't make someone a killer. But even Panamanian prosecutors accused the man of visiting the girls' accommodation before the authorities arrived, without police supervision, and likely tampering with evidence. And that is not something an innocent person would do. What's equally strange is that the remains were found only a few kilometers from his house. A European woman who had stayed at this man's farm told the Daily Beast that, despite his age, the tour guide could cover vast distances through the dense jungle with incredible speed, without showing the slightest sign of exhaustion. She also admitted that during her stay, she constantly felt as if the man was watching her. Additionally, he has been banned from a local hotel, with the owner forbidding staff from organizing tours with him due to his inappropriate behavior toward women. His police interrogation was also rather unusual. Without being told, he knew exactly where the two girls had disappeared, even though their scheduled tour for the next day was supposed to go in the opposite direction. And the most chilling detail, according to police records, 2 months before the disappearance, he had already described the exact location where the girls were last seen, where their remains were ultimately found. Of course, all of this could be mere coincidence, given that he is a tour guide who has spent his entire life in the area. The next suspicious figure is Frank Pardo, a former cartel hitman who escaped from prison in March 2013. He had been incarcerated for committing a satanic murder of a woman in 1996. To this day, he has not been recaptured, though authorities believe he may still be active around the Boquete area. Then there's the man known as the Bugab Hannibal Lecter, who was arrested in March 2017 after burning a 27-year-old woman at the stake just 20 minutes outside the city. He had met her on Facebook prior to the crime. What made his arrest even more disturbing was that he was found carrying a meat of unknown origin in his suitcase. Another person of interest is the taxi driver who took Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon to the Pianista Trail on the day of their disappearance. The man, named Leo Gons Les, had never been considered suspicious. He was known as someone who wouldn't hurt a fly. However, nearly a year after the two students vanished, he was found dead. The official cause of death was never determined, but what is certain is that his body was also pulled from a river. A local mountaineering instructor, who frequently takes students to that area and knows the terrain well, claimed that the water there is quite shallow and easy to swim in since there are no strong currents. He was among those who helped retrieve the body and noted that they heard no cries for help, nor did they find any blood. This suggests that the man did not hit his head on a rock or suffer an obvious fatal injury. There is also the possibility that the two Dutch travelers were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Earlier, the body of an 18-year-old student named Aria Guerra had been discovered in the area, missing all of her internal organs. These had been removed with surgical precision through a large Y-shaped incision. The evidence in this case also mysteriously disappeared, and while 4 people were arrested in connection with the crime, one of them was released even before being questioned. Of course, it's possible that this was nothing more than a case of rampant rumor-mongering, but the possibility cannot be ruled out entirely. The aforementioned journalist visited an undisclosed Panamanian morgue, where they managed to speak with an anonymous expert who had examined the bones. The expert revealed that only 10% of Froon's body was ever found, while in Kremers' case, it was just 5%. Even more disturbingly, there were no marks on the discovered bones that would suggest scavengers had been involved in their deaths. No scratches, no bite marks, and no fractures consistent with impact against rocks. This directly contradicts the official narrative, which still states that the 2 girls fell to their deaths. According to the expert, under natural conditions, the bodies should not have been found in scattered fragments after 8 weeks, even if they had remained in the river or on the riverbank the entire time. Additionally, some of the bones were completely devoid of skin or flesh, as if they had been thoroughly cleaned. In fact, traces of bleaching agents were also found on them. Given that no animals touched the remains for 10 weeks, this is, to say the least, deeply unsettling. The expert suggested that the small number of bones, their lack of marks, and the total cleansing all point to the use of some kind of chemical to accelerate decomposition. One such substance is quicklime, which, coincidentally, is widely used in the Panamanian region, where the girls vanished primarily by local farmers and large-scale coffee producers for soil treatment. And that is about as much as can be known about this incredibly tragic and mysterious case, one that has been officially closed, but could easily be reopened at any time, given the sheer number of oddities and unanswered questions. If you enjoyed this mystery, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories, unsolved cases, and fascinating investigations. Stay curious, and see you in the next mystery.